This is a presentation of my research that I conducted in Mubende Rehabilitation Centre. It's an analysis of the rehabilitation process of soldiers with disabilities, a case study of Mubende, Uganda People's Defence Forces Rehabilitation Centre. And I said it's an inlet without outlet. My general objective was to analyze the rehabilitation process of the soldiers with disabilities in Mubende Rehabilitation Centre, with specific objectives to examine the internal factors that influence the rehabilitation process of the soldiers with disabilities, and to examine the external factors that influence the rehabilitation process of the soldiers with disabilities, and then to examine the benefits of the interventions on the soldiers with disabilities. My design was, this study used a case study design to analyze the rehabilitation process of the soldiers with disabilities. As I said, a case study of the Uganda People's Defence Forces Rehabilitation Centre, and this was given appropriate and assumptive. This design was appropriately given, and okay. The time frame that was provided was enough for me to get the information, and I used both qualitative and quantitative approaches in data collection. That's the setting, that's the residences for the soldiers in one of the centers. That also is an office in one of the centers. Residences are the headquarters, and in the middle is a residence also in one of the detaches. So the study was conducted between June and September 2011 at Mubende Rehabilitation Centre in Mubende District, which is about 150 kilometers west of Kampala City in Uganda. The center has 4 sectors under it, namely the Chieftains of Mubende Rehabilitation Centre headquarters. It has the 6th sector near it, and then a 4th sector in a place called Intungamo, and another in Chankwanzi district. I selected this center because it has a population of about 15,000 people, who include 1,912 soldiers with disabilities, and it is the largest rehabilitation center in Uganda, which receives soldiers who have sustained disabilities after specialized treatment from injuries acquired from the battlefields. The participants, the focus was directly on the rehabilitation center departments that directly provide the services to the soldiers with disabilities. The sample was composed of 100 respondents. These included 30 key informants, where the chief, 4 directors, 4 unit commanders, 4 technical staff, 4 police, and mostly the people who are within who work within the center and the soldiers. The category of people was selected because of the composition of the general population in the society. They are also believed to have a certain level of critical analysis within their social setting. By use of random sampling, 20 community members included soldiers with disabilities, spouses, and other dependents selected from that community. Purposive and stratified sampling techniques were used on key informants and soldiers with disabilities. All were selected from Mubende Uganda People's Defense Forces Rehabilitation Centre and the local leadership. That's just a summary. The interventions, observations, and measurement of development active situation. Armed conflicts are the major cause of most soldiers getting injuries and sustaining disabilities. Wars are ongoing, not only in Africa, but in many parts of the world, and therefore most soldiers are expected to fall victims of disability. After the wounds get healed, the soldiers who sustain impairments are assessed by the Uganda People's Defense Forces Medical Board, which refers them to the chieftains of Mubende Rehabilitation Centre to prepare them for either redeployment in the military or resettlement in the wider community. This arrangement started in 1987 after the current Uganda government of the National Resistance Movement took over power. Currently, 1,912 soldiers with disabilities are in Mubende Rehabilitation Centre and still in military uniform, governed in military structure, and therefore on government payroll. Mubende Rehabilitation Centre still receives soldiers as UPDF, that is the Uganda People's Defense Forces, participates not only in internal armed conflicts, but as well in peacekeeping missions, like currently they are in Somalia. Originally, MRC was a military barracks that was just converted into a casualty unit and later into a rehabilitation center designated to offer full rehabilitation services to the soldiers with disabilities, though it still offers the original function as well. There has not been formal settlement for soldiers with disabilities ever since the establishment of the center. The center has over 10 square miles for housing and agriculture. These are in different parts in the 4 sectors attached to it. Most of the soldiers are illiterate and live with their families in the center with an average number of 6 members per household. The illiteracy comes in because by the time most of them joined, there were guerrilla wars, so people came in with no qualifications as such, and they were not trained. That is the number of soldiers that they have by rank. Then the coding of the impairments have those below knee amputations, 140, above knee, as you can see them. I don't need to read that. The concept of rehabilitation to the soldiers with disabilities. To the soldiers with disabilities, the rehabilitation process begins at the time the medical board refers them to Mubende Rehabilitation Centre. At Mubende Rehabilitation Centre, they expect to have medcare, physical, mental, psychosocial, occupational, and vocational or economic rehabilitation. Once they are reskilled, they expect to be compensated for their disability and given their pension and get retired and resettled. For those who fit for military service or any other works that can be done in the military circles, they get deployed. Mubende Rehabilitation Centre has services. So to achieve the resettlement or deployment, Mubende Rehabilitation Centre has several services and interventions which include administration and coordination of the services spearheaded by the support staff. Here support staff mean any persons posted to Mubende Rehabilitation Centre, whether a soldier or non-soldier, to offer services to the disabled soldiers. Manufacturing and provision of assistive devices, as well as mobility and adaptation training. Manufacturing, Mubende Rehabilitation Centre manufactures some assistive devices like artificial limbs for below knee, corsets, non-adjustable metallic and wooden crutches, non-foldable wheelchairs and tricycles, and specialized shoes. The foldable chairs and adjustable crutches, hearing aids, white canes, materials for braille are sourced from outside of the center, mostly as donations. The locally made crutches and non-foldable chairs and non-foldable wheelchairs were favored by the soldiers with disabilities because of their long lifespan and toughness in the inaccessible infrastructure. Then health facilities for medcare. There is universal education for both primary and secondary school for soldiers with disabilities who are interested in going into all back to formal education and their dependents. Vocational training, there is an institution that caters for the reskilling of the soldiers with disabilities in different trades for resettlement. and accommodation of the soldiers and their families. Yeah, those are some of the items that are manufactured there. Yeah, they do vocational. There is accommodation, as I said, of the soldiers with disabilities and their families. There is provision of helpers to those that have higher degrees of impairment. There is income generating activities and a saving bank that offers credit to the soldiers with disabilities. The spouses and children are organized into an association, the Children and Wives of Disabled Soldiers Association, as you can see, that is registered as an NGO and offers different services to the households in order that they can meet their needs. And soldiers have access to land for subsistence and commercial agriculture. There is recreation for fitness and promotion of togetherness. There are opportunities to participate in public functions and sports competitions, and there are qualified personnel to handle the assistive devices part and other support staff. Yes, the blind playing goalball. Then the Defense Forces shop and the bank, or the Renders Bank. Okay. However, there is general lack of qualified personnel to handle the psychosocial part of rehabilitation. Most of them are not trained to even oriented to disability and rehabilitation. The soldiers with disabilities have access to a lot of land but cannot utilize it for longer term investment because they are not aware of the time the rehabilitation ends. As well, the land does not belong to them as individuals. Okay. Yeah, the main outcomes or measures. The main outcomes, according to what I've said above, there is a lot of pressure on the existing facilities. As you've seen, the buildings were funny. Due to lack of resettlement for those who have completed skills, yet most soldiers with disabilities are being brought. Though vocational training is carried out, there is no outlet, yet the process of rehabilitation requires resettlement and interventions in order for the soldiers with disabilities to function to full capacity and be socially accepted in their communities. Some of the leaders regard the locally made non-foldable and adjustable assistive crutches and wheelchairs as cheap and substandard and therefore prohibited, yet the adjustable ones are weak given the hilly terrain and potholes in the roads in the center, as well as access to the gardens. Yeah, you find that the leadership has not provided the infrastructure, and they see it as embarrassing for soldiers to go with crutches that are so stiff. there is a very evident conflict between command and rehabilitation. Guard duties and ranks surpass the disability and rehabilitation issues. Lack of a systematic rehabilitation process, coupled with lack of trained personnel in disability and rehabilitation. What qualifies one to have completed rehabilitation is neither clear to the leaders of the center nor to the disabled soldiers. There is concentration on communal income-generating projects against the individual disabled soldiers' economic empowerment, yet salaries paid to them are not enough to cater for their minimum household needs. Oh. Yep. Okay. The high literacy levels affect the confidence of the soldiers with disabilities. This limits their participation in vocational skills. The military command structure of governance makes the soldiers feel discriminated by their seniors, who do not give them a chance to express their views, and this limits their confidence. The soldiers have not practiced the skills that they have acquired, and this has not helped them at the end of the day. Soldiers enroll for vocational training regardless of their ability and interest, so that it does not become an impediment in case retirement came today. So vocational training is a formality. The unknown time for resettlement makes soldiers with disabilities have no long-term plans. The assistive devices preferred by the leadership limit the soldiers' mobility. Well, implications for the field and next steps. The analysis indicated that soldiers have overstayed in the rehabilitation center, which calls for an outlet policy as contended by many of the soldiers. The issues of soldiers with disabilities is a national one, not merely a Ministry of Defense issue. Militarization of the rehabilitation means lack of understanding of the concepts of disability and rehabilitation, and it calls for recruitment of trained staff. I think I should stop there. Thank you so much. We're still going on. Thank you.